Hello everyone, welcome back to day 8 of our 2-week long California road trip. If you missed the last episode, I'd highly encourage you to go back and watch it as we introduce ourselves to Yosemite National Park and hike the famous Mist Trail. To fit the theme of long strenuous journeys, today we're going to make it to the very top of Yosemite Falls. For some context, Yosemite Falls is 2,424 feet tall, making it the tallest waterfall in North America and the 6th tallest on the planet. This is the monolith of all waterfalls in America, and to reach the top you'll have to complete a 7.5-mile out and back trail with 3,218 feet of elevation gain. Because my brother and I tend to rack up on shorter hikes instead of doing longer ones on our trips, we hadn't experienced something this challenging before. But we handled it pretty well and had enough energy at the top to fully enjoy the view and tackle a dangerous, narrow path to the end of the trail that I'll show you all soon. To get to the upper Yosemite Falls trail, you can park at the trailhead parking lot, but because we didn't do our research and had no idea this parking was there, we walked a bit of ways anyway. Good morning everyone, from Yosemite Falls here in the national park. We are hiking to the very top of that thing. 2,600 feet of elevation gain, something around there. It's gonna be a long hike, but we're really excited. Our parking spot was across from Sentinel Meadow, which is where you get some of the best views of Yosemite Falls. But it wasn't convenient for us since it meant we had to walk an additional mile to the trailhead. As I said in the last episode, you can't let small setbacks bring you down, and instead you've got to take things one step at a time on these longer hikes. Once we got to the trailhead, I was already decently tired. Isn't that hilarious? Thankfully though, I gained a lot of energy and encouragement in the first bit of the trail, which is ironic since the first mile is arguably the hardest part. You're gaining elevation through constant switchbacks without much of a change in scenery, but it's all worth it once you make it to the Columbia Rock viewpoint, because from there on out, the views you'll be getting are absolutely unbelievable. You get some of the best views possible of Yosemite Valley and Half Dome, which look incredible in the sunshine. This is also where we saw our first fauna of the day, a lizard who had small pockets of light blue on his back and stomach. The next mile of the hike is the one part of the trail where you can breathe and not have to worry about serious elevation gain. Most of the hike just goes up, but this is somewhat flat as it's just trying to get you closer to the fall itself. This stretch is also the most scenic portion of the hike, with mind-blowing views of Yosemite Falls in all of its glory. If you're trying to get a picture-perfect view of this thing without a swarm of people around you, I'd highly recommend you at least get to the view we are now when visiting Yosemite National Park. Because it was pretty hot today, we appreciated the fact that the next half mile of switchbacks were shaded and misty. Additionally, the side view of Yosemite Falls from the end of these switchbacks is unbelievably incredible. Now prepare for a challenge, because the rest of the journey to the top is very steep and rocky. While I said the first portion of the trail was arguably the hardest, that's because there isn't much of a change of scenery and you're just going through the same switchbacks for a while, so it's pretty uneventful. Here, you're right up against the ginormous granite cliff, so putting scenery aside, this is by far the most strenuous stretch of the upper Yosemite Falls trail. But if you keep your head on the prize and keep pushing, it won't be too much longer until you reach the end goal, and the views are amazing up here. Though I will honestly say that the views weren't as good as the views coming up the trail. I did expect the best views, or at least for you to be able to look down to the bottom of Yosemite Falls from up here, but you don't really get either. The most exciting thing to see up here has more to do with the journey, as to technically complete the hike, there's a short, narrow walkway to a viewing area just beneath you. Now most people stop before this section since the views are more or less the same, but you can see the top of Yosemite Falls, and the views are better without any people around you. Now before doing this trail, my brother and I had been watching a bunch of YouTube videos of this portion, wondering whether or not we should do it. A decision ultimately wasn't reached until we actually made it to the top and saw it for ourselves. Yes, it was scary, but not enough to deter us away. I actually thought it was a bit less narrow than the videos made it out to be. Maybe this is because you're focusing on the view in the videos, and in reality you're focusing on your footwork and that's it. With that in mind, I'd definitely go for it if you're up for a little bit of a challenge. The journey back down to the valley floor is much easier since you're losing elevation gain instead of gaining elevation, but it also feels a lot longer in my opinion. Definitely plan for 6 full hours of hiking just so you have some extra time to be safe. For us, it took us an hour 15 minutes to reach the top, but we really pushed ourselves and didn't have very many breaks. To get back down was closer to 3 hours, which looking back at it totally makes sense. So to answer the question in the title, how difficult is the upper Yosemite Falls trail and should you do it? Well, if you don't have very much experience with longer hikes, it's definitely quite challenging. It's long, enduring, and as my brother called it, mature, since there isn't much of a change in scenery as many of the other longer trails in Yosemite. That said, it is still one of the most memorable experiences I've had hiking in the park, and the highlights being the views of Half Dome and Yosemite Falls midway through the trail made it worth it. If you aren't planning to do the scary bit at the top, I would honestly recommend that you get the views of the falls and then turn around. It's a lot of effort after that to justify a view that isn't nearly as good as what you're getting earlier on in the trail. Plus, we're hiking this because Yosemite Falls is in the name, so getting those angles sounds good enough to me. I would certainly recommend you try this hike when you visit Yosemite National Park, but how far you make it should depend on your experience and plans at the top. If you have a time crunch and have tons of other things to do in Yosemite National Park, I'd just make it to the falls and that's it. But nevertheless, you're bound to have a great time on this trail, so don't forget to enjoy yourself. Also, this was our second of 3 days we'd spend at Yosemite National Park, but our last in Yosemite Valley. And since most people that come here are only going to be hiking in the valley, let me give some general thoughts on the park. With our experience on the Mist Trail yesterday and the Yosemite Falls Trail today, I can safely assume that Yosemite National Park does live up to the hype. I had wanted to visit this park for years because I've always heard so much about it, but my fellow road trippers know the drill. If you're coming all the way up to Yosemite for the first time, you've also got to squeeze in Sequoia, Kings Canyon, Death Valley, and the list goes on. So now that we had the time to road trip all of California, one of the things I was eyeing most was Yosemite. And wow, this place really is just incredible. Maybe some of the most imposing waterfalls on earth, the most impressive cliff and rock formations imaginable, and some of my favorite trails I've experienced. This is without question one of America's best national parks, and as I'm writing the script post-road trip, the gem of California. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.